What if, when God prepares you, it will hurt, is the refining fire needed to shape you for His greater purpose? Through trials and challenges, He molds your character, strengthens your faith, and equips you to fulfill a destiny beyond your imagination. The biblical examples of Joseph, Moses, Job, and Jesus offer profound insights into how trials and pain are often tools used by God to prepare individuals for greater purposes. Joseph's story begins with dreams of greatness that seemed impossible in the face of his circumstances. Betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused and imprisoned, Joseph endured one hardship after another. It might have seemed as though God had abandoned him, yet every painful experience served as preparation for his ultimate role in saving lives during a famine. The betrayal by his brothers was not the end of Joseph's story. It was the foundation for the fulfillment of God's plan. His ability to forgive, to lead, and to act with wisdom when he was placed in a position of power did not come naturally. It was shaped through his trials. Joseph's journey reminds us that what others intend for harm, God can use for good. Similarly, Moses provides another compelling example of divine preparation through trials. As a prince of Egypt, Moses initially acted out of his own strength and killed an Egyptian in defense of his people. This impulsive act forced him into exile, where he spent 40 years in the desert. During this time, Moses may have felt forgotten and abandoned, but in reality, God was shaping him into the leader he needed to be. The desert was not just a physical location, but a spiritual training ground. Through years of isolation and tending sheep, Moses learned patience, humility, and reliance on God. When he returned to Egypt to lead the Israelites out of slavery, he did so not with the confidence of a prince, but with the humility of a servant guided by God. The burning bush marked the moment when Moses realized that his past failures and his time in the wilderness were not wasted. They were part of God's intricate plan to prepare him for his mission. Job's story offers a profound exploration of suffering and trust in God. Known for his wealth, health, and integrity, Job lost everything in an instant: his possessions, his family, and even his health. His friends, who came to comfort him, instead accused him of wrongdoing, compounding his anguish. Job's story could easily have been one of despair, but through his suffering, he came to a deeper understanding of God's sovereignty and faithfulness. Even when Job questioned why these events had befallen him, he ultimately acknowledged that God's ways were beyond human comprehension. In the end, God restored Job's fortunes, but more importantly, Job's heart was transformed. He recognized that his dependence on God was more valuable than anything he had lost. Job's trials remind us that suffering can strip away false securities and lead us to a profound encounter with God. Even Jesus, the Son of God, experienced pain and suffering as part of his preparation for his mission. Before beginning his public ministry, Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness fasting and being tempted by the devil. This period of isolation and struggle was crucial in preparing him for the challenges he would face. Later, in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus prayed in deep anguish, knowing the suffering that awaited him on the cross. Yet even in this moment of vulnerability, he submitted to the Father's will, saying, "Not my will, but yours be done." His obedience in the face of unimaginable pain paved the way for the salvation of humanity. Jesus' brokenness on the cross was not a defeat. It was the ultimate act of love and redemption. His life demonstrates that pain, when embraced with faith, has the power to fulfill God's highest purposes. Each of these examples illustrates that trials are not random or meaningless. They are intentional moments where God refines individuals, preparing them for roles they could not fulfill otherwise. Joseph's ability to lead, Moses' humility, Job's trust, and Jesus' obedience were all shaped through seasons of hardship. These stories remind us that while the process of preparation is often painful, it is always purposeful. When we face trials, we can take comfort in knowing that God's hand is at work, molding and shaping us for something far greater than we can imagine. In this way, the pain we endure becomes a tool for transformation, equipping us to fulfill the unique purposes God has planned for our lives. Pain is an unavoidable part of life, but in the hands of God, it becomes a powerful tool for preparation and transformation. When we experience pain, whether through personal loss, failure, or trials, it often forces us to confront areas of self-reliance and false securities that we may not have realized existed. This process, though deeply uncomfortable, is an essential part of God's work in shaping us into the people He has called us to be. Pain is not meant to harm us. Instead, it breaks down the parts of us that are not in alignment with God's will, making room for growth, dependence on Him, and a deeper understanding of His purpose. Imagine a person who has always relied on their career or financial stability as their source of identity and security. Losing that career, while devastating, often exposes the fragility of placing trust in worldly systems. In such moments of loss, God uses pain to strip away the illusion of self-sufficiency. Without the comfort of what was once a constant, we are forced to turn to God for strength and guidance. This painful process not only fosters dependence on Him, but also teaches us to find our identity and worth in being His children, rather than in our achievements or possessions. Consider the example of Paul, who initially placed his identity in his status as a Pharisee, his knowledge of the law, and his reputation. On the road to Damascus, his encounter with Christ led to blindness, symbolizing the removal of his reliance on his own understanding. Through this painful experience, Paul was humbled and transformed, learning to depend entirely on God's grace. This transformation equipped him to spread the gospel and endure the immense hardships that came with his ministry. Pain also has a way of exposing the unhealthy attachments we hold. Relationships, material possessions, and even our personal dreams can become idols that take the place of God in our hearts. When these things are taken away, it feels like a piece of us is being stripped away. Yet, in that stripping, God is creating space for something greater. He is teaching us that nothing in this world can satisfy us as He can. For example, someone who loses a close relationship might feel abandoned and broken. However, in the midst of this pain, they may discover a deeper relationship with God as they learn to lean on Him for comfort and strength. The loss, while heartbreaking, becomes the means through which they experience God's presence in a profound and life-changing way. The process of preparation often involves moments of confusion and frustration as we wrestle with why God allows pain in our lives. We may not immediately understand His purposes, but the Bible reassures us that His plans are always for our good. One vivid metaphor is that of a gardener pruning a vine. The gardener removes branches that are dead or unproductive, not to harm the vine, but to allow it to bear more fruit. Similarly, God prunes our lives by removing things that no longer serve His purpose, whether it be toxic relationships, harmful habits, or even opportunities that seem good but are not aligned with His greater plan. The pain of pruning is real, but it is also necessary for growth. Without it, we remain stagnant, unable to step into the fullness of what God has prepared for us. Another way pain fosters dependence on God is by revealing the limitations of our own strength. When life is going smoothly, It's easy to rely on our abilities, intelligence, or resources. But when we encounter trials that we cannot fix or control, we come face to face with our human frailty. These moments are opportunities for us to cry out to God, acknowledging our need for His help. The story of Job is a powerful example of this. When Job lost everything, his wealth, his health, and his family, he could have turned away from God in anger or despair. Instead, he chose to worship and trust in God's sovereignty, even when he didn't understand why he was suffering. Through his pain, Job learned that God's presence was enough, and his faith was refined in ways that would not have been possible without the trials he endured. Pain also teaches us humility, which is a crucial aspect of spiritual growth. Pride often leads us to believe that we are in control of our lives and that we don't need God. Pain shatters this illusion, reminding us that we are dependent on Him for everything. This humility not only strengthens our relationship with God, but also makes us more compassionate and empathetic toward others. When we have walked through seasons of pain, we are better equipped to comfort and support those who are going through similar struggles. Our own experiences of God's faithfulness in the midst of pain become a testimony that we can share to encourage others. Consider the refining of gold as another example of how pain serves a greater purpose. To remove impurities, gold must be subjected to intense heat. The process is not gentle, but it is necessary to reveal the gold's true value and beauty. In the same way, God allows us to go through the fire of trials to purify our hearts and strengthen our faith.